Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
It's Overreaction Tuesday time. That's Lynnell. I'm Craig, as most people probably know, because this is my show. We do this
Very much
week.
your program.
You're nice enough to join us every week in this spot. So, last week...
We're just going to get right to it? Okay.
Yeah, I
Get right
mean, you had a take that set the internet on fire. Sam Howell,
by the way, that is the purpose of the segment.
I mean, not really. It's just to have a good conversation about football. If it happens to come out that way, like,
that's what happens.
Sure. We'll take the attention on the show. We like people listening. We like it to be sustainable and not flare ups. Like we want a nice slow burn, not a grease fire.
100%.
But your take was that Sam Howell was holding the Commanders' offense back. And then he went out and played probably his worst game of the season, a game in which perhaps a veteran quarterback, through both mental and physical different decisions or different execution, might have had a better chance of success. So how you feeling about that take from last week?
I still am firm in my belief of it. I think he's holding the offense back. I think Sunday we got to see some other reasons how he's holding the offense back, because the sacks – credit him, credit the offensive line, credit the coaching staff not putting him in position, but I don't think that's really the case. I think at the end of the day, I thought you put it beautifully in your first and 10. At some point, you've got to be able to play NFL quarterback at some level, right? You can't, EB can't walk out there and throw the hitch for him, right? And the thing I go back to from Sunday, this has been something that's been the case to me all year long. He's missing the routine plays to me too frequently.
I think that's getting worse. I don't feel like he was earlier in the year. I feel like it's gotten worse. I do think that, like, if you want to isolate the sacks, like play by play, blame by blame, those are mostly on the offensive line. Offensive line, like, and that is different than
and it's a different conversation.
Yeah, it's different than most of the games this year. However, in some of those, if you want to like scope out one level, situationally, they're in some bad down and distances because he misses throws earlier in the drive. So, like, and I think you can also make an argument that EB probably could have set them up to success earlier. But, like, I think the big thing that I took away from the game is, like, watching it on film, is the plan was way better than anybody thought it was coming out of Sunday.
Yes.
There was more quick game. There was more max protect. Definitely would have liked to seen a heavier dose of the screen game. Would love to know why they don't use that more.
They wait until third and forever to run it.
In hindsight, I would have rolled the pocket and done some of that stuff sooner. I think, Keim's kind of on this kick with what Terry said post game about getting some deeper shots and take the snap, 1-2, get the ball out, fade. And there's at least one of those in the first half that like Sam just doesn't throw. The one that he misses to Jahan. Where he throws it kind of behind him and the defender gets his hands on it.
Yes.
Like, that's an okay decision if you make the throw out in front of Jahan. But the best decision on that one is it's man-to-man. Like, throw the ball to Terry McLaurin against their third corner. Yeah. So I think that, like, that was a nightmare matchup for Sam. I do think still I'm a little uncomfortable with he's holding the offense back, because I think moving forward, like, if he plays like he did against Philly last time, again, they're going to be fine. Yeah. But I also think that there's, like, some other stuff happening where on a much bigger level, they are putting a ton on him because of how much they throw the ball, and that doesn't seem like a wise decision because he's a second-year player. I'm not even going to do the fifth-round pick thing. Because he's a second-year player, and if you want to end that in a summary of, or like if you want to end that in conclusion of he's holding the offense back, then like, okay, but
I get what you're saying.
That was a decision made in the offseason.
Correct, and I think that's part of my deeper issue. So Jeremy Fowler of ESPN had a tweet yesterday that I thought was really revealing in terms of what you just said, how much they're putting on his plate. Sam Howell's tied with Jared Goff for the second most passing attempts with 256. All of the other quarterbacks in the top 10 are at least in their third season. So they are essentially putting a hell of a lot on his plate. But when you are openly handing the keys to the franchise to somebody, you got to put a lot on their plate and see what they can digest and what they can't digest, and then you scale it back. Isn't that How you would prefer to?
No, I think that's an overreaction / a miscalculation.
Okay.
Bam, overreaction Tuesday, mission accomplished.
But you get what I'm saying, though?
I get what you're saying. I disagree with the philosophy. Okay. Like, I understand it. It's kind of like hey, let's throw him in the deep end, see if he can swim.
Gets. Yeah.
But that's not how swimming lessons work.
And that happens in the off season, doesn't it?
Well, it's more so that's just not how swimming lessons work, right?
You drown.
Right.
You'd very much drown.
No. You give your kid floaties first, and like you have the instructor hold them, and like
there's levels to it.
Yeah, you don't. You don't become Michael Phelps instantly. Like you don't throw a 3-year-old in the pool and be like, "Hey, go beat Michael Phelps for an Olympic medal." And that's kind of what they're asking him to do. Like,
but how much
plugging
do you think,
in Sam where Patrick Mahomes was?
How much of him having to throw the ball that much is a reflection of the game plan or them facing some massive deficits early in football games?
There's some of both. I mean, I do think
that's why I think it's context to that stat.
Like 70. Like I was looking it up this morning, and then I was on the train ride over here. I was like, oh yeah, the Bears game is in that, right? Like in the last 3 games, they've thrown the ball 73% of the time, but they threw it 55 straight times against the Bears because of the game flow. So that's like a little bit misleading, but the reality is the stat's not that different on the year as a whole.
Yeah.
And they've been up in some games, like against Atlanta, for instance. So like those two should kind of balance out. They don't because they just throw the football a ton. And this was a choice that Eric makes philosophically, like, and they organized their offseason that way. They didn't practice the run. And I believe that, like, what Kyle's doing with Brock Purdy, and if you want the best example of all time, it's the best example of all time. Tom Brady did not come out being like a really high-volume passer early. They let him work into that, and then he became Tom Brady. So the idea that, like, in order to be Tom Brady, you have to beat Tom Brady immediately is just blatantly not true. Yeah. And even with Mahomes, like, they ran it more when he was younger because they were morphing from the Alex Smith offense. And then he became Mahomes, and they're like, oh, we're going to let this dude cook.
Right.
So I think that you could be easing Sam into it far more, running stuff that's a lot easier for him as opposed to all of this, even half-field read type of stuff, but nevertheless the amount of dropback that they're doing.
So my thing is, and you kind of hit on it, this goes back to the offseason for me. We should have known they weren't going to come out and run the football. And then my thing is, that's not the solution right now to me either, because if you go back and really look at the numbers, and I know there's context to those numbers, they're not running the football well at all right now. Like, they're not a good running team. And I think that, to me, running the football is like a lifestyle choice. You don't just come up week 8 and say, you know what, we're going to be a running team all of a sudden. That's just hard to do, especially when you want to have complex layers to your running game and be multiple with it. I think from a running back perspective, and this may be the overreaction, I think Chris Rodriguez probably has the best vision of any back on this roster.
That's not an overreaction. That's a simple statement of fact.
Like, I think that's why they selected him. I think that's why you're seeing him get more opportunities in this offense. But to go back to the bigger picture of what you said, them putting too much on his plate, I would love to like have a breakdown of how much of these passes are actually traveling down the field in comparison to the quick game, because we know the West Coast, all their principles are off a quick game and the screen game. You mentioned we haven't seen the screen game a lot. He's not hitting the quick game stuff consistently enough for me in the past couple of weeks. So if I'm EB, I love what you said. Like, what the hell do I call for the kid?
Right. It's like, and that's the thing, is like ultimately Eric's job is to figure out what is it that I can call that we can be, and it starts with Sam, but the O-line, the receivers can be successful at, and it doesn't seem like they found that. Overreaction Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show is part of Not My Beat. That's Lynnell Willingham. I'm Craig Hoffman. You know how that goes. All right. But to the running the ball point, like, I agree with you, and Logan talks about this in great detail on Take Command frequently. Like, if you want to run the ball, it is a lifestyle choice. Mike Shanahan used to always say, like, if you're going to live by the run, you're going to die by the run, because you spend time on it and you scheme it up. And they don't have the attention to detail. For all the talk about EB and attention to detail, and this is quite funny to me because he is a former running back, for all of the attention that they pay to their pass game and all of the detail, they don't have that on the run game. They just line up in whatever formations that they practice.
Normally shotgun.
And a lot of times it's been gun, and they run Wanda or Zorro or like these different versions of zone
left, zone right,
gap scheme run stuff that they run power. They run all of it. It's just not with any particular extra attention to detail of like, oh, if we move this receiver here, then he can crack that guy at the second level, and this 4-yard run can become a 20-yard run pretty easily. Like, they don't do that stuff in the same way that certainly Kyle does in San Francisco, but it's not just Kyle, because I know people get kind of sick of hearing about Kyle, especially with Logan, but like Logan played half his career for Kyle. People that complain about that, sorry. Like Mike McDaniel has taken that with him.
Yes.
Kevin definitely has some of that although they pass the ball a ton in Minnesota, but I think like LaFleur, like these guys that really run it but also Seattle does this.
And everyone's copying their run schemes.
For sure.
So
and they're like,
works.
Hey, if we have the receiver crack back on the linebacker, then we make this double team easier because the double team on the offensive line doesn't have to get to that linebacker. Right. It allows for a better block on the first level, and we've taken care of the second level instead of risking both. Like, there's little things like that this team doesn't do. But at the same time, like, they're not bad running the ball either.
No, they're not horrible.
They're average.
Yes.
And that's, I think, an important thing to point out because people want to make it sound like they're averaging 2 yards a carry. Like,
it's like 3.3 or something, I believe.
I mean, they were over 4 coming into the weekend.
Okay.
Now, some of that is Sam scrambles. Right. But, like, the running backs this weekend averaged 3.6 a carry. But you and I both know if you run the football and you, like, do it with some purpose, like,
all that can change quickly. We saw it last year with the team.
Right. You get the second half where all of a sudden guys are tired, you warn on them a little bit, and you bust 2 or 3 big ones that pull your average right back up to 4 or 5 a carry. Like, you have to live with some not successful runs early to get to the better runs late. And that's something that this team seems unwilling to do. And they don't really have a substitute for it because the quick game isn't very effective right now. Like, Sam's just got to get on that.
On time. So Washington right now is 13th in the NFL in terms of yards per rush attempt at 4.2, which you could live by.
100%. But like, if you look at the rushing totals, they're probably in the 20s.
In terms of like yards
per game. Their attempts are so much lower than almost every other team.
Yeah, in attempts per game, they are 30th.
Right. So you take that, it's hilarious because like I did this last week where you pull up ESPN.com stats or whatever site you want, and you have yards per carry rank. And then you rank it by that, and then you look at the next column is yards per game, and it's like 180 Dolphins, right? And you go down, and everyone's over triple digits, and then there's this one outlier that's in the 80s amongst all the triple digits, and it's the Commanders, who are right there in yards per carry, but simply do not run it enough to accumulate over 100 rushing yards per game. It's wild.
So, and this has also impacted Sam's play-action pass numbers to me, which is why I don't feel like they're going to play-action a lot because it's not
I don't think
effective.
He likes play-action.
Why, though? Do you think it's a short quarterback thing?
Yes, I frankly do.
We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
I think
certain things he's not going to be able to do.
I think some of the quick game elements, too. I also love how you've turned this segment around to where you're interviewing me.
Well, look, we'll go left to right.
We'll get more overreaction takes from Lynnell in a second, but I think the Sam stuff is obviously the most important here. But, like, I think some of the quick game stuff, like the pick last week, I think that's tipped. I've looked at it now. I've gone back again.
That's what we were trying to debate on the in-game show.
Barely tipped, but enough that it takes the velocity out of the ball, so it gets picked. That's a short quarterback thing. If Sam's an inch taller, that's not a pick. Yep. It might be an incompletion, but it's not a pick.
Yeah, sure.
You have some of the quick game stuff that gets batted down. The screen game is harder for a shorter quarterback because you have to loft it over the rush.
And you're letting inviting pressure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, of course, you can also throw it out wide to receivers. Like you could, you can swing screen. Like there's different variations of the screen game to overcome that. But like your basic, like, come on, come get me, let me loft it over your head, running back screen is really hard for Sam. So I do think that some of these problems are like, and existential feels too strong, but like unsolvable in nature because he's not going to grow. And there just are certain limitations that if I am whoever the next OC is here, if it's not EB because of how things are going, or if I am EB and I'm here next year with Sam, I'm like, you are going to talk to Drew Brees this offseason to figure out how he played quarterback in this league for so long because Drew Brees did all that stuff and he didn't seem to be bothered by the short thing. And they're the same size. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but like I do think some of this stuff is that. And to your point, like the play action stuff, if you turn your back to the defense, right? If you're running it from under center, not these gun fakes. If you turn your back to the defense, you then have to turn back around, whip your head around, and look downfield and get a clean picture quickly. If your picture has a lot of holes in it because you see helmets, it's real muddy, and you don't necessarily see the things you need to see.
You're a nuanced radio host, my friend, because that's real, and like that's part of the reason why I just don't believe he's going to eventually be the guy. Like we just don't have this laundry list of short quarterbacks that you have to have. Normally, these short quarterbacks have special innate abilities. I don't know what his is to this point. Russell's was the deep ball and the mobility. Drew was pinpoint accuracy. And I just don't really have a lot of
I think Sam
examples.
throws a really good deep ball. I think he's tough as nails. He seemed unflappable until this week. This is also the first week that I've looked in his eyes, like on the close-up TV shots. I mean, like, that man looks scared.
He always has the, and I
feel like he looks so calm every game until this one.
Normally
He's
looks
just
emotionless. I normally can't read him because I just think he has the blank stare.
No, but you're like,
Which
I don't
I want
mind.
him to have that.
Yeah, but like this week, you look in his eyes, you're like, that is a man who thinks he's about to die.
Yeah.
So I think there is a lot of really, like, I think he's a phenomenal competitor. I think he's got the right mental makeup, but he would be like, I'm not ready to say I don't think he can be the guy yet. I'm still undecided on that, but I am willing to say the same thing I've been willing to say all along, which is we should be realistic about the fact that if he is the guy, he's bucking a major trend.
Yes.
And that there's probably a reason, and it's not like short person bias.
Now, here's my whole thing, and it goes back to like this offseason where I was like, I want the best quarterback to play. I don't think it's fair to the guys on the roster to have to work through Sam's growing pains and as well as try to win football games. I don't think you could develop a young quarterback and have winning be your most important thing, which is what they're trying to sell us as the plan. I don't buy that. I gave you the analogy before we actually started recording. There's a time and place for everything, right? There's a time to develop a young quarterback. It's not year 4 of your tenure. There's a time to play NBA Youngboy or Lil Wayne. It's not at the 9 o'clock service with your boombox, right? Time and place for everything. It's not fair. I know no one cares about me. For me as a fan to have to watch it, it's not fair for the players, which is why I think, not saying John was like angry at Sam on Sunday, but like that's part of it. When he says it's been 7 years of this, they want to win.
Yeah.
John's been to one playoff game in his 7-year career. Like that's tough, dude. So at some point, I think the organization and Ron missed the boat where it's like, dude, you've had 3 years to develop your own quarterback. Your arrogance made you fire Kevin O'Connell, who was a competent offensive coordinator, made you get rid of Kyle Smith, who's a good talent evaluator, and that was your time to develop the quarterback. You had Dwayne Haskins, who, say what you want about Dwayne and whatever rumors have come out about his work ethic, hands down better prospect than Sam, and had more upside.
Well, I mean, physically, sure, but like
that's all
Dwayne,
we got to go on when we're evaluating in terms of the offense he played in too.
No, but you also have to evaluate the mentality and the work ethic, and like that stuff's really important. And there was a lot of like, let's just say that some of the people you just mentioned weren't exactly psyched about the Dwayne Haskins draft pick, and that should tell you a lot. Obviously, it's always weird talking about Dwayne now, and I really do wonder if he could have turned things around in Pittsburgh, but like this organization, not the place for him. And the previous owner made that happen, and that is 100% on Dan.
But even after Dwayne, though.
But, 100%, and they probably should have been more aggressive. I always go back to, like, there weren't a lot of obvious answers with where they were drafting, who was available free agent-wise. Like, they, in a way, like got themselves in a really bad bind, but they probably also could have been more creative in some spots. That's a different show for a different time. The only problem I have with your analogy is, or like not even the analogy, I'll leave the church analogy alone. With your premise here is to say like you can't develop a young quarterback and win at the same time is false if the best chance you have to win is the young quarterback. The development happens. The development happens while he's playing. I think Sam Howell is better most weeks than Jacoby Brissett for what they want to do. Not by much, and I do think that had Jacoby played, I haven't said this to a microphone yet, but I might have said it to you off air. I've certainly said it to others off air. I think realistically, you don't do this. You don't change quarterbacks in the middle of the season. But if you had to win that game, like with your life on the line on Sunday, Jacoby would have been the better quarterback for that game. In the same way that like Tyrod Taylor's probably a better quarterback for the Giants with that offensive line and the kind of variance they need. It's going to backfire on them pretty, dramatically. Maybe this week, because Tyrod does take more risk and he's going to have a 3-pick game. I mean, that wouldn't happen with Daniel Jones. But like against a Wink Martindale defense with this group and this coordinator, I think Jacoby gives them a better chance specifically against the Giants. Yeah. Most weeks, I think Sam Howell is the better player and worth the development as he'll continue to get better, and that will become more and more true as time goes on. So, like, I don't think those things are like explicitly mutually on different paths, because if the young quarterback is also your best quarterback, then you are, at which he was in training camp, by the way.
I agree with that.
You know, then the development happens. The development happens while you're trying to win the football game by nature of trying to win. What I do think, though, you're correct on is the game plan side of it that I talked about earlier, which is like, are you just saying like, let's put it all on his plate to see what he can do, or are you trying to develop a game plan to win the football game and allowing him to develop within those game plans? And that's where I don't think they're doing the best job.
I just don't know if we have a real answer to that because we haven't seen someone else try to operate it. I think that's why I'm like, and this is technically, I guess, my overreaction for this week.
Let's get one more takeoff.
Go crazy. I think I'm at a point right now where I would be giving Jacoby Brissett first-team reps and maybe start him in your next football game. And people are going to disagree with that.
I'm out on that.
I just feel like I want to see it. It has let's just call it what it is. I don't think the offense has been functional since Philadelphia.
So that is which games? That is
Chicago, Atlanta, New York.
Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta, they were pretty darn good in the first half.
Then they bogged down in the second half, and then they got their first down on Sunday in the second half. Before that, they were 0 of 19 on third down.
Yeah,
why are they in these third and longs? Because he's taking sacks on first and second down. They're having penalties on first and second down.
Well, I mean, that's
a part
the other
of
thing,
it,
too. Like, it's really easy to brush by the penalties, and you watch it back, and you're like, God, there's a lot of penalties.
Kills you.
The O-line
kills you.
The O-line had its worst game of the season.
Well, they know
by
Nick Gates is
far.
not.
I mean, yeah, like Nick Gates had a terrible, no good, really bad day. Your boy Sadiq did not have a very good day at all.
I actually regret the comment that I made earlier this year. Remember when I said he was going to be a Pro Bowler?
Yeah, that was probably a little premature on your part.
Very premature.
They had a bad day. And that's penalties. That's missed assignments mentally. That's missed assignments physically. Like, it's everything. So, I also feel like the Giants are a pretty unique challenge with how they play defense.
Boy, you played them twice last year when your quarterback situation was not answered. This is my thing with the fan base, and this is why I'm getting off topic here. People are like, yo, I don't want to play Sam because I don't want to bench Sam because we know what Jacoby is, and I want to see Sam grow. Last year, we knew what Taylor was, yet y'all were okay throwing him out on the field.
The problem is he was winning games.
Well,
When he stopped, I think that would have been like, and I think we talked about that at the time. Like, well, shoot, if this is what it is, and just like see what the kids got.
Yeah, because he was the only guy under contract going into this year. Like,
they were in a weird. I will give Rivera this. I don't even want to call it credit, like excuse,
Crutch.
whatever. He has been crutch. That's a good one. He has been in some weird spots timing wise, where it's like
them though.
Some of them, yes, where it's like, but it goes back to the quarterback thing kind of all along. Like last year, they've got a game to make the playoffs against Cleveland. Did he make the wrong decision in going to Carson? Yes, but like if he had gone to Sam there, that would have been nuts. Yeah. It might have been the right choice in hindsight, but like that would have been nuts to give that kid his first career start. Hey, by the way, playoffs are on the line. You want to talk about not fair to the rest of the team? Like he should have gone. He clearly should have gone with Taylor, right? So that's like one of the examples. We talk about them not really having a direct line to draft someone at some point. Like, could they use a second or third rounder earlier in his tenure? Maybe. Sure. Those options are available, but it's not like outside of year one where it was clear they were taking Chase, like Herbert, but they had just drafted Dwayne the year before. So, like, he inherits Dwayne. Like, there's a lot of, like, sliding doors moments in Rivera's
I hate
era.
it that is built in for him because he hasn't.
But he also
handled them better.
Yeah, he also hasn't done anything to like overcome those or be like, hey, we're going to do something dramatically different, and it's going to cause short-term pain, but it's worth the long-term. He's in a league where teams turn it around in 1 to 2 years, like in year 4 of what he hopes is a 5-year rebuild, and that's like
who gets that amount of time? And then it's so frustrating. When
someone whose owner would have fired him if he wasn't under multiple investigations and on his way to being kicked out of the league. All right. If you want more takes from Lynnell, go check out the B. Mitch and Finley podcast. He co-hosted that show today, so check that out in the 106.7 The Fan, or on thefandc.com, your favorite podcast app, whatever. You get plenty of Lynnell takes there, and he'll be back with us next Tuesday here on Overreaction Tuesday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.